Harry's Wife, Part 82.17, Backlash. Strip her. One of the difficulties that many narcissists face is that being driven by their pursuit of the prime aims, it invariably causes them to get up the nose of other people. For the majority of narcissists, this is at a local level, friends, family, colleagues, neighbours, etc. And of course, those that operate a facade don't necessarily get up the nose in the way that the narcissist does, say, to an intimate partner, primary or secondary source. However, there are, of course, many of our kind that operate on a larger global or international scale. That, of course, means that the rewards that are provided with regard to the prime aims are amplified. More people, greater facade, more money, more connections, more fuel, etc. And those are tempting prizes indeed. Famous narcissists, if you will, or well-known or powerful narcissists, are drawn from across the various sub-schools, but it's no surprise to find that invariably they're drawn mainly from great or ultra. And the reason being is that our more evolved form of narcissism enables us to maintain control without basically fucking it up through collateral consequences. Our Machiavellian minds are thinking ahead, working out what needs to be done, what's going to happen next, the implications, the ramifications, calculating it all, and forging the most appropriate path, rather than the clumsier approach of the lessers and the mid-rangers. Invariably, if you are to find any lesser that is well known and prominent, it tends to be amongst the upper lessers. With the mid-rangers, usually upper mid-range, but also can be found with certain middle mid-range also. And here, of course, one of the collateral consequences of Harry's wife's recent attempts to extend her facade, assert control, and garner fuel is the reaction to the ill-thought-out and quite ridiculous letter about parental leave. Courtesy of Marie Claire, which of course is going to take the sting off the majority of what's being stated here by virtue of the fact that it's a fairly supine publication that's pro-Harry's wife, leads with the title, Republican Leaders Want Harry's Wife Stripped of Her Royal Title. The backlash came after the Duchess penned a letter advocating for paid parental leave. The article explains, one of the main reasons Harry's wife and Prince Harry moved to the United States was to stretch their advocacy across the pond and focus their energies on the issues that matter most to them. No, Marie Claire, that's what you think is the reason. The reason was the assertion of control by withdrawing from being involved in matters in the United Kingdom because she wasn't able to assert control effectively enough over the media, over the British public, and of course the extended members of the royal family. The way that it was portrayed was to focus energies on the issues that matter most to them, but that's just the veneer, the excuse that the narcissism gave to Harry's wife because she is unaware that she in effect ran away. The article continues, paid parental leave has been a big issue for the Sussexes, since in the United States there is no national paid family leave policy, something that's been blamed for the recent worker shortage, among other problems. Of course, it's only a big issue for the Sussexes because it's a big issue for Harry's wife, because it enables her to assert a facade and assert control. Parental leave is not a concern for her, although, of course, through character trait acquisition, she tries to portray the fact that she's been involved in parental leave, and as I always point out, you have to leave something in order to have that parental leave. Flouncing around being a bananatarian, spouting nonsense, is not an occupation. The article continues. This week, Duchess Harry's wife penned an impassioned open letter to the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in which she called herself an engaged citizen and a parent. I'm writing to you on behalf of millions of American families, yada, 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 yada. It's not exactly a controversial stance to write a letter in favour of paid leave to the two politicians in charge of Congress. Well, actually, it is Marie Claire, but you're doing your best here to help her regain some control through, of course, another PR piece. It is controversial given the fact that she did so using her title. It is controversial because she's trying to make out that she speaks on behalf of millions of American families, when most of them be saying, you're not entitled to speak on our behalf. You have got jack shit knowledge about my circumstances. There you sit in the rarefied atmosphere of your Monty Shitshow mansion with your 27,000 flushing toilets, hidden behind your security cordon, issuing stupid videos with your pile of books at the bench of stench while the clown prince is juggling outside. What the F do you know about my life? What the dickens do you know about the struggles and tribulations and trials that I face? Sweet Fanny Adams. But of course, she thinks that she does know because she's Queen Empath, or should that be Queen Empath, who believes that she's in tune with the nation, that she understands the feelings. And that, of course, is the preoccupation, or one of them, of the mid-range narcissist that believes that she is an empath. The article continues, but some Republicans have since spoken out about Harry's wife's advocacy. It's not advocacy, it's interference, telling her to stay in her lane when it comes to political issues. In a statement to the Daily Mail, Representative Jason Smith, a Republican from Missouri, even suggested stripping her and Prince Harry of their royal titles. Ms. Harry's wife's latest interference in US politics reignites the question in my mind as to why the royal family does not simply strip her and Harry officially of their titles, particularly since she insists on sending this under the pretense of being the Duchess of Sussex, he told the publication. A few other members of either party joined in, arguing that the royal family should not weigh in on politics in the future. But it's hard to figure out what it means for an issue to even be considered political in the current climate. More on this in a second. Well, as you know, ordinarily the royal family doesn't engage itself in political matters. However, that's not going to stop Harry's wife because of the absence of boundary recognition and her sense of entitlement. The article continues, this is not the first time Representative Smith has called for the Sussexes to have their titles stripped because they said a thing he didn't like. And here we are now getting into the body of the article, which is there showing its pro-Harry's wife credentials. Last year, he argued they should be removed from royal duties for interfering in the US election. The interference in question, Prince Harry told his social media followers to reject hate speech in the upcoming election. Earlier this year, Smith was one of the 147 elected officials who voted to overturn a legally held election in order to hand the presidency back to Donald Trump. Bit of smearing going on of Smith here. In a larger sense, it's hard to really see why Harry's wife's letter is political. It is clearly political, you absolute numpty. Who wrote this again? Let's go back. Katie Drell. And the picture of you looks like you're licking an ice cream. Well, that tells us all we need to know, that if you're so moronic as to use in your picture, you're with your gob open shoving ice cream into it, that you don't think that letter's political, then really you are a bit of a epsilon semi-moron, aren't you? Of course it's political. It was written to two politicians, and she wasn't writing to Nancy Pelosi saying, hey, Nance, I'm absolutely shit at getting dressed. Any chance that you could give me some tips? You always look pretty well put together. Or, hey, Shumi baby, I noticed that you've got one of those new robots in your garden, trimming the lawn. Is it any good? No. She was writing to two politicians in their political capacity about a bill that was going through the relevant legislative process in the United States that was to do with parental leave, which is furthermore a political issue. Marie-Claire, it's not hard at all to see why Harry's wife's letter is political, but it's hard for you to accept that, as obviously you're receiving the Sussex dollars to write this tripe. The article continues, defenders say that her purpose was to advocate for human rights, and that there's nothing inherently democratic or Republican about paid family leave. It's still political because there are some people that don't want to bring it in. It has been traditionally a bipartisan issue, and even a major point for Ivanka Trump's advocacy during her time as a White House advisor in her father's administration. But it's interesting that some Republicans in Congress have a knee-jerk reaction to otherwise regular human rights issues, seeing as they're somehow antithetical to their views. Similarly, looking at the rejection of hate speech as somehow politically opposed to Republican ideology is telling. No, Prince Harry's message, like Harry's wife's letter, didn't support any politicians or political party by name. In fact, there was probably a time not so long ago when rejecting hate speech was something most Americans would agree is a good thing to do, actually. Yes, but it doesn't matter whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's still a political matter that they're straying into. So, nice try, Marie Claire, but you've got this one completely ballsed up. The article continues, so by the logic presented by Representative Smith, Republicans see hate speech as so central to their platform that rejecting hate speech is a rejection of republicanism itself. Well, that's some majorly twisted logic. I guess what I'm saying, well, nobody else has a clue what you're saying, and if you're not sure yourself, well, what does that say about you? I guess what I'm saying is that's a pretty big self-own, and maybe politicians should just not weigh in on the royal family in the future. Ho, ho, ho! See what you've done there, you've turned it around. What you've missed, and this actually is almost sugar-like behaviour, isn't it, listeners? Notice that if Harry's wife stayed off the radar, nobody would have anything to say about her. You wouldn't seek her out. But because she keeps putting her head above the parapet and coming out with asinine bollocks, people respond to it. I had no interest other than talking about her for the purposes of narcissism. And as you'll have noticed with other people in the very series, I've mentioned them once and I've moved on. Why? Because they don't habitually keep coming up on the radar. Harry's wife does. And the fact is, people weigh in on the issue because she keeps causing people to have to weigh in because of her ubiquity. She's like Japanese knotweed growing everywhere, and the nonsense that she comes out with. And people are entitled to respond to that. Of course, the sugar response is, you shouldn't be allowed to comment upon her. You don't know her. And you're just a hater. No, if she stayed out of things that she, A, shouldn't be involved in anyway, and B, has no real knowledge about and doesn't add anything to the sum total of understanding, then she wouldn't find herself being lampooned, lambasted and mocked anywhere near as often. But of course, she's completely unable to see that because her narcissism doesn't allow her to recognise that she basically makes an idiot of herself. Instead, it tells her that she is the Grand Empress of wokedom, that she is a major bananitarian of the highest order, and that she's doing the right things, and she has to stand against the haters and the racists and the people that laugh about mental health problems and so on and so forth. Marie Claire here is just yet another advocated piece, paid for by the PR dollars, and basically, whilst it attempts to try and pour scorn on the backlash against her because of that ridiculous letter, all it goes to do is demonstrate that this is a piss-poor attempt to assert control, is wafer thin in its intellectual capacity, and only demonstrates once again that those that ally with Harry's wife are almost as bad as her with regard to the behaviours. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.